The Breaking Down from Essential Atrocities. She leaves me, as I always knew she would, her hand slipping from mine, my name slurred on her lips as she stumbles back through weeds and uncut grass, the remains of old rusted bikes and broken toys. Back into the stinking dark where I was born, slamming the door shut behind her. There was a time when I would have followed, scuttling after her, tripping, snaring myself on weeds and nettles, screaming and clawing at the door. A time when I did, though I forgot until this moment. Most of them like her, running, screaming, thinking themselves safe behind their doors and windows. Men and women, boys and girls, dogs barking, cats yowling. Others, like me, a rarer breed, remaining, in awe as the creatures emerge through the fog, the red haze of morning, rumbling, cracking roads and pathways, knocking down telephone poles and street lamps, cars crushed, vans hurled out of their path. Impossible. A nightmare. A storybook or horror film nonsense that the world can't sustain, sanity won't allow. Unable to see clearly at first, only the carnage that sweeps in their wake, speeding cars ploughed off the road, crashing into front gardens and the facades of houses, through the fences of the nearby infant school. Memories I'll never make, of being trapped behind them, of hating the idiot play of the stinking, squealing others they set me amongst, the weary, hateful eyes of teachers at their desks. Panicked flight, screamed pleas and prayers in different languages to different gods and messiahs and saviours. Many stumble, breaking legs and heads on the pavement, trampled by the rest or mown down by cars. Bodies fly up into the air like ragdolls, breaking as they hit the ground, bags of red pulp and splinters. She still screams my name through the living room window, the pale-faced woman I've loved and hated, adored and feared most of my life, who I've never truly known. I turn from her, from the weeping red-faced sister she holds in her arms, smiling as I realize that it's over. Nursery and friends, teachers and doctors' visits, dentists and shopping trips and her boyfriends, so many, strange faces in the dark, some smiling, some friendly, many not, looking at me as though I'm a rat scurried up from the sewers. That life, with its uncertainties and unwanted wakings, with its commands and parameters, its denials and disappointments, over now. I stumble from the grass, through the broken fence, hearing her hammering on the window hard enough to shudder the glass in its setting. How she screams, how she weeps, but doesn't come for me. Not in love enough with her child to risk stepping outside, dragging it back into the dark. What a relief it will be for her, not having to play mummy anymore, knowing, seeing it in her eyes on those days when our crying and laughter, our questions and confusions are too much, a confession more eloquent than any words, that sears me inside with its abyssal cold. I wish you'd never been born. I don't hate her for that, as others might, though I did once upon a time when I had nothing else, when she was the reluctant, bitter core of my world, when her poison was my only experience of mother's milk. No point in hatred now. No point in remembering scars that will never have chance to become old and obsessive. On the street, beyond her eyes, tingling with the forbidden pleasure of trespass, as the first emerge from the fog. Immense, misshapen things, bulging bags of muscle and limbs, distorted and slumping, poorly put together, as though they might burst or unravel with every shambling motion. None are the same, a nursery art project, salt clay and plasticine monsters, each sculpted by different hands. One boasting a head that rises to a flopping point, eyes bulging and blinking all over, red and yellow and streaming, tongues lolling from the mouths that pant and part in its sides, revealing a black and infested interior. Another slithers forward like a slug, leaving a glistening trail in which the others slip and stumble, its head a garden of arms like a great flower, every limb scrabbling and pawing at the air, as though to drag passing angels into their embrace. A thing hidden from view, draped in rags and tatters like old bandages or burial shrouds, wet and stained, glued to its pulsing body by whatever seeps beneath. With every step, clots of steaming stuff fall away, squirming where they land, alive until one of those that follow crushes them to inert pulp. Cries, even from those that don't run, hands rising to appalled mouths, eyes watching through interlaced fingers, unable to believe, unable to look away. Closer, closer, more creatures emerge from the fog, following one another, each carrying great chains that stretch back, clutched in their fists and talons or driven into their flesh, drawing something that rumbles and shakes the ground, something that strains and creaks as though every scrap of dead wood in the world protests its own murder. People call my name, neighbours beckon from gardens across the way as I stagger from our house towards the intersection of Lyndhurst and Carham, the school where I'm supposed to start this September. Burning, screaming, a van careens off the road through the steel wire fence into the classrooms beyond. I hear them, see them through the smoke and flames, figures running, scurrying, crawling through the rubble, black and orange, blue and yellow. They collapse as they reach out, legs disintegrating beneath them. Some are fused and shapeless, teachers carrying children already still, silent, some wandering as though blind, the eyes melted from their heads. A girl with fiery wings flaring from her back screams as she stumbles across the playground, not yet ready to take flight. A boy who reaches the steel wire fence, clutching at it with blackened fingers, tears streaming down the half of his face that remains. I know what I'm supposed to feel, that I'm supposed to scream, vomit, run crying for mummy, but I don't, won't pretend anymore. A parade. The creatures blocking out the school in their number become a mass of impossible anatomy, the like of which I've never seen in any dream or video game, cartoon or comic book. I'm supposed to be afraid of them, disgusted by them, the ones that seep and bleed, the skinless, torn open, with pulsing insides on the outside, or that are more bone than flesh. Those with scales, those with mismatched and infested feathers, those made from swarms of spiders or screaming cockroaches, those that drool liquid fire and weep lightning. But I'm not. No matter how much Mummy's little boy screams inside, demanding my tears, my terror. More and more appear, so many they burst through the houses on Lyndhurst, smashing walls and windows, trampling conservatories, swarming over ceilings that sag and collapse beneath their mass. I don't run, fascinated, fixated as obscuring walls rupture and slide away, exposing sacred interiors, living rooms and bedrooms, landings and hallways, places I know in some instances, places I've walked on the rare occasions my mum dragged me to neighbours' houses in the time before they inevitably turned against her, when she started sneering and swearing at the mere mention of their names. That familiarity doesn't dilute my discomfort, the strange sense of peering on someone as they undress, these places where people sit and sigh at their TV screens, stand singing in the shower, reading books in bed, arguing over bills and wallpaper and what they might have for dinner, distressingly naked, though not enough to make me look away. I stop, spluttering as the dust of those demolitions reaches me, tingling in my throat, scratching my eyes, tears blurring my sight as the creatures slump and slither and stalk by. Some of those like me, similarly mesmerized, not yet fled for cover, are curled up quivering on the ground, break, fleeing in broken-legged awkwardness, sprawling on their faces in the dust as they fling themselves towards the beasts, crying to be taken by them, carried away or consumed, to be made like them. Most are battered away, bones broken, organs ruptured, others unthinkingly crushed beneath elephantine feet, trampled by bovine hooves or raked to shreds by avian claws. Lost in the dust and filth the parade leaves in its wake. Still not running, still not screaming, the little boy crying for mummy, distant, fallen into the abyss inside, worms rising from it to entwine and drag him deeper. I laugh at his desperate, accusing eyes, at his strangled screams, knowing that I'll never have to listen to him again after today. None of those that call my his name, come to drag me from harm's way, none loving or desperate enough, become pale, smeared faces behind filthy windows, ghosts whose names I'll soon forget. Ignoring them, I draw closer, through the dust and grit, the scattered rubble, those sprawled broken and twitching throughout. I've seen before, not only in films that Mum doesn't like me watching, on the internet, in my own nightmares and imaginings, the red inside, spilling out through ruptured bellies and smashed skulls, the way they twist and shudder, as no body can or should. Laughing through the dust in my mouth, the blood in the air, laughing as those still able blink through red and black masks reaching for me. Skipping over them, weightless, my bones become those of a bird, a sparrow, their clutching hands falling from me, slick with blood, too mutilated to hold on. I stagger to a halt at the edge of the parade, so close I can smell the stink of beasts, blood and metal and sweat, the filth that slicks their path. Wailing sirens disrupt their songs, flashes of blue appearing at the bottom of the hill, ambulances, police cars. Laughing so much, it hurts. What are they going to do? What do they think they can? Cries, screams, gunfire. The beasts force their barricades, brightly coloured cars and vans flying, uniformed and armoured officers likewise. Nothing but toys in a moment of over-enthusiastic play, the kind that makes Mummy shout and swear at me about how expensive they were. These ones aren't expensive. 2 more arrive for every one that breaks, not that it does any good. Mechanical mosquito hums draw my eyes up to the red sky, helicopters hovering there, bigger, closer to the ground than any I've seen, olive green, their sides opened, weapons slung from inside. I laugh so hard it hurts as missiles scream, as guns revolve and blaze, sparks churn from the surrounding concrete, the shattered street, the ruins of houses. The creatures caught up in the fusillade burst like rotten fruit, spatter out from themselves, spilling the parasites inside. Few even slow or stop, those that do slumping forward or collapsing into the dust, trampled to smears of filth by the rest. Mr. Astwith from number 26 at the end of the row, who sometimes talks with us when we play in the street outside, telling us stories of his time as a soldier, a teacher, who sometimes lets us dig for beetles and bury treasure in his front garden, is hurled from his feet as the blazing streaks of white and yellow find him, his cardigan becoming a shredded black and red mass, still smouldering as he falls and becomes still. Mrs. Astwith and Lucy, their daughter, shriek from the open front door, reaching out as though to drag him inside, Lucy beckoning for me to join her. I smile, shake my head, too much in love with it all, watching as one of the beasts, a thing composed almost entirely of flesh like compost and burned black bone, erupts, a missile finding it, burning meat in shards of flaming matter raining all around, some lodging in its siblings' hides, though none of the wounds cause them to slow or comment on its passing. From out of the red mist comes ear-splitting cries, those of great birds with throats of torn and twisted metal. Gasps go up from those that still look on as they emerge, flapping immense leathery wings, spined tails trailing behind, bodies like masses of skinless meat and muscle, studded with irregular steel spines, some pristine and silvery, others rusted and tarnished. I don't see where they come from, only the helicopters manoeuvring to face them, weapons already blazing, sending several down in flames. For every one are 5 or 6 more, no two entirely alike, some with mouths like the pictures of flatworms I've seen in biology books, others snaking, worming masses whose myriad teeth whir and churn like chainsaws. The helicopters spiral down as the creatures batten onto them, heedless of the rotors that shred their twisted flesh, raking open cockpits to winkle out the pilots, tearing them apart and swallowing them in still quivering chunks. I yelp in pain as I'm thrown to the ground, shockwaves rippling the concrete beneath my feet. Plumes of black smoke and orange flame go up, in which the creatures writhe and squabble, more concerned with claiming their share of the meat than the fire charring their flesh. Another falls closer, on the school, glass and dust and metal soaring, a lethal rain that wounds the beasts as they trudge by, sending several onlookers sprawling back with scraps of twisted metal in their eyes and bellies, their heads stoved in and bleeding from chunks of brick or plaster. Children still scream, impossibly alive, as the beasts that brought the helicopter down thrash and unfurl in the ruins, hurling blazing bodies left and right, plucking up those that screech and writhe, squabbling over and devouring some, though far from all. Some they pluck up and cradle like dolls, like children of their own, smothering the fires that infest them with laps of multiple tongues, with folds of their own anatomies, drools of viscous matter. They gather the trembling, almost burned fleshless things to themselves, pressing them inside through organs and apertures I don't understand, some still visible through translucent blisters in which they float, through swellings and tumours and bloated bellies, a little like mummies when Anna was still inside of her, like Auntie Sharon's before Cousin Cameron was born. Bleeding. I feel it run down my leg, my back, hot and sticky, pooling black around my feet. A time not so long ago when the sight would have had me in tears. Now, nothing but smiles forever and ever. I don't know how or why, but something is passing here today. Something beyond the parade of beasts, beyond the red fog and what it conceals. A promise of tomorrow, the inevitabilities that I've known and dreamed of from the first instant, but denied, that the cancer called sanity has kept me ignorant of, in order to preserve itself. The first attempt, a day shy of my 13th birthday, a razor from the shattered set I've been using for a year now, my fingers cut from forcing its plastic casing, a bath almost bubbling with heat, the best way, or so the internet tells me. Downstairs, the TV, turned up high so as to half obscure the voices hissing and snarling beneath. He'll leave for good this time. I know he will. The only one I've ever loved, who has treated me with anything like humanity. She'll chase him away with her jealousy and her spitting, slurring rages, her petty thefts, her casual cruelty. And that will be the end. I'll never see him again. I can't bear it. The thought of being stuck here with her, of being forced to work whatever shitty job a 13-year-old can get to pay her fucking bills. Stolen from again and again and again, every birthday, every Christmas, anything that might be mine, in gifts, in cards, denied when I confront her about it, every accusation eliciting the same shams, mock surprise, feigned insult, a play of incredulity that I could say or think anything so vile of her. Even when caught red-handed, her grubby fingers in my wallet, rooting around inside my coat pockets, my drawers and cupboards, returning my stolen bank card to its rightful place. I fucking hate her. I fucking hate this. Lies and thefts and disappointments. A world of dirt, getting filthier by the second. I don't cut deep enough. For a delirious, blissful moment, I think I've done it. Severed my chains and escaped. The pain sears through, blistering me, momentarily wiping out thought in a white apocalypse. Then I drift deliriously down into the strangest of dreams, of what never came, the infernal parade that murdered this day. Waking, though I fight the dawn like an autistic child flailing against the doctor's attentions, wrenched up through dreaming depths, though I'm happy to drown, an echo of original indignity, which I can only recall here, in the non-space between living and dying. Waking not to welcomes or sympathies, but scowls and recriminations, the selfish bitch and the selfish fucks that call her friend, family, all waiting to spew their poison in my face, to tell me what a horror I am to her. Wishing I'd cut deeper, that I'd torn myself open so the bleeding couldn't be stopped. My first job, a few days a week at the local bakery, I fall into it by accident, a work experience placement, finding a knack for it, liking the place, the people. My boss, Sean, is a decent guy, off his face on MDMA half the time. Some rich kid from London decided to jack in his life as a banking executive to start over again here. I like him. He loves me. It's an illicit affair, my first, my only, one that occurs behind the counter, in the kitchen, the alley behind the shop. Everything is new to me, never having known this kind of comfort, this contact. He teaches me how to be, away from her and home. He even keeps me for a time, nights spent away, which he hates me for, believing that I have a girlfriend, that I'll leave her and Sister Anna to fend for themselves. Half right, at least. The little thefts, I get used to them. £100 here, 200 there. Whenever I confront her, nothing but frothing, spitting abuse, reminders of being at her tit and heel for the previous 10 years or so. I change my bank card, my PIN number, set up security that she can't breach. She hates me for it, just as she hates me for the crime of being. Sean, it can't last, not as it is, as I am. Too much of her in me, too much poison in my blood and brain. Suspicious, paranoid text messages and phone calls, invisible chains I wrap around him, constrict him with, that I'd weave through his flesh and lodge to his bone, if I could, to have him with me always, to know that he'll never leave me. The first in a long line of broken loves, forced back home to her, the font of corruption, the living tumour in my soul. Other jobs, other boyfriends, some so far there are oceans between us, yet she's always with me, a ghost wreathed in cigarette smoke, sneering unhappy smiles. I love all of them, the rich, the poor, the healthy, the diseased, black eyes and blisters in my throat, loving the ones that provide them most of all, until they tire of me, until they hurt me too deeply. Never still, never stable. One moment, the secret affair of a movie star heartthrob who keeps me in gin and chocolate, a palatial home for the gift of my silence, the promise of my mouth around his cock. The next, trading blowjobs in the back streets of LA for the price of a cup of coffee. Dying. No message of it. No address to send it to. Hearing almost by accident that she's passed. Suicide. Emulation of my failed efforts, slit wrists and vodka in the bathtub, a brood of bastard siblings screaming for a day or two before neighbours broke down the door. I laugh. Washed and fed and tested by then, a case of herpes, of gonorrhea in the throat, treated thanks to the man who has plucked me up, dragged me from the gutter. It doesn't matter. Myriad deaths follow. Alien to comfort, to stillness, less able to bear it than the violence and uncertainty of the streets. Letting them take me, starvation, freezing to death, injecting myself with shared needles in some stinking abandoned place, floating away in heart-stopping bliss before the man who would be my angel finds me. I double over with laughter, tears, almost going to my knees, no longer a child save here, in this idiot unfinished body. So strange, memories and projections of what will never be filling its skull, swelling me beyond my brain's capacity to rewire itself. I feel it try, as the parade trundles on, as the beasts grow in number, size, variety, as some even turn from their labours to regard me, beckoning me to join them in their blissful slavery. I smile refusal as blood seeps from my nostrils, my temples throb. I'm not ready, not in this state and skin, too easily broken, my heart too easily stilled or ruptured or ground to pulp. Pulsing, my head, my back, my belly, the red mist fills me, whispering stories into my mind beyond the ones that echo back, that I remember, though I've never lived them. Contradictory gospels, lives that fly in one another's faces, becoming a common slurry of miseries and disappointments, punctuated by bursts of salvation that feel like love, but dwindle and flicker out far too quickly. None endure, none make me mourn their loss, not even those that paint the prettiest pictures, in which the loves of my lives find me in my teenage years and never go away, never reject or abandon me. As for the worst, the ones where I never leave home, where she battens and swells on me like a leech until the day she or I die, I laugh, knowing they'll never come to be. It comes as they ebb, the last lost life flickering like a candle in a blizzard. The red mists part, my skin with them, tears in my pulsing back and head and sides, the pain nothing next to my desire to see. What emerges through the mists as they boil and part, as they peel open, layers receding like curtains to some unimaginable theatre. The beast's chains linked to an immense engine, a creaking, pulsing thing of black matter and machinery, of great wheels grinding the muck and rubble. Atop it, a mass whose immensity, whose lack of form, murders what little is left of the boy I remember, the child who falls screaming into its own abyssal maw. impossible, impossible to define, the shapeless, shifting state before my eyes, portions of it blistering, bubbling with new arrangements, organs and configurations before they rot and recede, withering like flowers, like clusters of fruit in the coming of frost. Eyes. Eyes in lunatic number and variety, eyes of beasts and insects, vermin and parasites, men, women and children, mouths the same, nests of worm-like tendrils snaking out to lash the ones that carry it, to pluck up those that watch, dragging them into fang-rimmed maws or snapping beaks into puckered, dilated orifices. The machinery upon which it sits bound to it, a part of it, conveyance and creature inseparable, parts of the same lunatic anatomy. Falling to my knees as it grinds closer, as more and more and more of its immensity emerges from the mist, raking at myself, screaming as what little remains of the boy slows away, the whimpering, worthless, lost little boy that this lost, whimpering, worthless world would have me be, over and over, forever and forever, until whatever machinery suspends it, in whose effluent my new fathers were born, breaks down. Seeing it as I see every flailing, flickering potential, every day that will never be, no more revolutions, no more expansions and contradictions, no more births, deaths, and rebirths. I know in that instant why they're here, why they eat their ways through, why they seed and gather as their cuckoos spawn, parasites in the womb, both of and not of the flesh we resemble, the species we infest, a certainty that I've never felt outside of dreams, knowledge convulsing me with the violence of lightning's kiss. New and ancient purpose, brain and body fruiting with new states, even as the old and unwanted burn. Emerging, a blissful sensation, cool air on new, wet skin, unfamiliar senses flaring, the world a riot of shape and scent, of taste and colour. Nothing more beautiful to my reconfigured senses than the ones that have come to remake me. Behind, shattering glass, screams. Lucy descends on silvery threads and filaments that erupt from her translucent skin, shreds and tatters of the girl she was streaming behind her. She smiles, though she no longer has lips with which to make one. Returning it as we embrace, as our shifting bodies melt and bleed momentarily, any distinction between us disappearing. Others, our heretofore unknown siblings, already in flight, slithering or swarming to join the mass, to flock around those that drag it forth. Those that would have condemned them to the old cycles, that no longer have any claim over us, call and cry out, trying to hold them, beat them back, murder them, rather than let them fly free. None succeed. Their world is over. The engines they've slaved themselves to on the verge of breaking down entirely. Lucy and I tear apart, though it wounds us, one of her coiling luminous tendrils still clutched in my talon, our flesh fused. Taking flight, our songs rise with the screams of dying mothers and fathers, their impotent, defeated cries, familiar condemnations, my mother's voice amongst them, cursing the day she allowed my absent father to spit me into her belly, that she didn't drink bleach while I gestated, failed to strangle me at birth. Abrupt silence, their bleating cattle hymns, their engines' dismal dying roars, drowned out by our own songs as we spiral and soar, laughing, watching the empty, impotent world they made for us come apart, making way for one we'll dream for ourselves, that may be of nightmares, but that will be ours at last.